The next interview is some person I'm super excited to welcome on stage. This is a talk I'm personally excited for because we're going to talk about all the things that have been finally accumulating in the background, and we're kind of feel like we're at the right point where you can see another explosion. And what we're going to talk about is how far are we on getting more consumer apps into this space. And for this interview, I'd like to bring on Roham, who is the founder of Dapper Labs. You may know Dapper Labs from all the amazing projects like CryptoKitties or NBA Top Shot and everything in between, and now recently the Disney Pinnacle. And we're going to talk about what the world has been looking forward to on how do we get more and more people to play with blockchains. So please join me in welcoming Roham on stage.
Thanks, Rob. Thank you for being here.
You and I have a very long history of overlapping and doing a lot of things in this space, but I feel like I still have to bring this up every time because I don't think more new people know this. I personally believe, with enough evidence, that Roham is the person responsible for the mainstreamification of NFTs. They made what NFTs are just one, possible as a standard, contributing to that, helping invent that, but also really kind of showing people the cool things you can do and how you can make blockchain playful and not just finance. And the kind of first question I want to ask you is, how has that evolution been? You kind of started off by building CryptoKitties on Ethereum. We kind of saw a bunch of bottlenecks that sort of got you into a whole new path on inventing a handful of new things to solve those issues. Give us a kind of quick history of the last 7 years.
Yes, 7 years dating myself. And first of all, I mean, thank you for having me. I always love being at Ethereum events because I truly believe Ethereum is the most interesting community in technology right now. And I think that includes ChatGPT. And so, you know, the value that we're sort of transferring and creating here is absolutely incredible and doing it in an open way. So really excited to be here. You know, before I answer your question, I want to tell a little story because it kind of broke my heart a little bit. So as first time in Australia, I'm going through customs. They select me for one of these totally random checks. And as the lady's kind of going through my stuff, she asked me what I do for work. And I asked her, have you heard of NFTs? And she kind of looks at me and you know, she smiles, so that's good. But her answer kind of broke my heart because she said, oh yeah, NFTs, those things you buy and sell. And as you know, we've always been about, well, it's not just about the buying and selling, it's the ownership experience, is why you would have them in the first place, why you would hold them, what you can build on top of them. And in fact, you know, for me, NFTs are just stuff, digital stuff. And a lot of times you buy and sell stuff, but often you don't necessarily. And so for us, you know, the most interesting things that I think happen in NFTs are divided in, you know, both digital things that happen in digital worlds, and we started that with CryptoKitties because, you know, the initial purpose of a cat was just, hey, pass on its digital genes to its next generation. But I think so much is happening today with digital things in physical worlds, and, you know, the concept of an NBA Top Shot or even a PFP or an asset that you have is about showing your identity to everyone, not just the people that are sort of in that community. So for us, it's been a journey of not just kind of increase utility, but increase reach, and trying to figure out how we can take this technology and make it something that people can interact with beyond just buying and selling, and actually make it something that's part of everyday life.
After CryptoKitties kind of launched, the media famously tuned that we've clogged the blockchain and this is never going to work. And we kind of obviously saw a bunch of obvious problems that sort of got us more and more motivated to the scaling path. But you kind of separately went ahead and implemented your own solution, which was the Flow blockchain. What was kind of the goal and motivation back then for creating Flow? And kind of how, or I guess, what does the Flow ecosystem look like right now? And how has it evolved?
Yeah, so Flow.com, I mean, the motivation was twofold. It's not just the scalability issue, but in a lot of ways it was user experience. And yeah, as you know, Dapper was a big builder in Ethereum for, you know, the first sort of 2 years after CryptoKitties. We built the first consumer smart contract wallet. It was the first wallet to pay for gas on user behalf, first wallet to do credit card integration, first of all, to do key recovery. And it wasn't, but by the time we got that MBA deal, which was, mid 2019, we just didn't feel that was enough. It was still too complicated. It was still too much friction. And it wasn't something we felt we could, introduce to mainstream audience to. And that the genesis of Flow.com was effectively that the protocol needs to do a lot more work on behalf of the developer and make a lot of things that are now actually part of the Ethereum space with account abstraction and other elements, a native part of the protocol. So you get native protocol level account abstraction, you get a new programming language that makes it really easy to play around with new use cases for smart contracts and new use cases for crypto. But at the same time, we kind of overcorrected, and in a lot of ways, the being so different blocked a lot of adoption, made it really difficult for external developers to build on Flow. And so the folks that ended up being most successful on Flow were sort of bigger companies like Dapper, but also Ticketmaster, Mattel, startups that have raised a fair amount of capital like Genies or others. And I think what we're doing this year, and why I'm so excited to be part of the Ethereum sort of community again, is the new Flow upgrade. Basically makes Flow, lowers the barrier to entry and makes everything we've built available to Ethereum developers, and makes it so that builders on Flow are not leaving Ethereum behind, but everything they're creating is actually fully compatible with the Ethereum landscape. So I'm excited to talk about that. But maybe one quick thing. You introduced me as CEO of Dapper, which is the role I'm here in. And I say we because Flow is Dapper is the biggest builder of Flow. We're the original creator of Flow. But Flow is a completely independent foundation, entity, team, board of directors, and separately funded now, which is also part of that exciting element of actually being formally part of the community. So we've got some folks from Flow Foundation here, we've got some folks from Dapper here, some folks from the Flow community here, Flowverse, etc. And it's all really exciting.
And I mean, it's also a growing evolution too, because you had to make the first bet and be your first customer, and then over time, you saw a lot of people use it, and actually that became a big community. What you kind of said was super interesting. You kind of started off the intro with saying that this is the most interesting community out here, and this year there's going to be a heavy push from the protocol side on Flow to make sure that Ethereum developers have a place too. What does it mean for them to now deploy contracts on Flow, and what exactly does it mean for you to support EVM as kind of part of this big push?
So for us, the way we implement the EVM, two things were most important. Number one, it's got to be fully EVM equivalent. That means that it's got to look and feel exactly like deploying to another L2. And so in that sense, anything that works on Ethereum mainnet will work out of the box on Flow as of the Crescendo upgrade. So Crescendo is in preview net now, so you can go test it out, and the environment's right there. Test that end of this month, early next month, and mainnet a couple months after that. So it's all coming up quick, but that's the first design goal of make it really easy for Ethereum developers to deploy onto it. And by the way, that first includes a lot of the multi-chain tooling, so on-ramps, off-ramps, all of the sort of utilities, middleware that other developers rely on. And then the second design goal was there's no point doing that if developers don't get something extra. So it's not just another Ethereum L2. It's an Ethereum network, an EVM network with the additional features and functionality of Cadence. And so you can, in the same contract, take assets in and out of the EVM environment, put them in the Cadence environment, perform operations on them, and then put them back seamlessly in one transaction. And so for a user, that means, hey, my stuff I can interact with an NBA Top Shot, but my stuff still shows up when I go to OpenSea. For a Flow developer, I can have a application written in whatever programming language, but the asset will still be on ERC20. It'll be compatible with all of DeFi on Ethereum. It'll be easier to get listed on exchanges, et cetera, et cetera. And so we kind of want to think of Flow as an extension of Ethereum, not just EVM. And for that to happen, I think it has to be that seamlessness between Ethereum and Flow, and that seamlessness between Flow EVM and then Flow, that kind of cadence and environment. And I think the other thing is, the developers should be able to use whatever is the right kind of tooling for the job. And in the future, you can imagine WASM environment running on top of Cadence or Move or whatever it might be.
Amazing. what has been the initial reaction for all the devs on both sides, so Ethereum and also the Cadence developers kind of trying things out?
Yeah. I mean, I think on the Ethereum side, it's been universally positive because in a lot of ways, people want more content, people want more users. Our missions are aligned in that we want to bring more and more adoption and sort of real world sustainable use cases to the space. But it's been this schism of like, oh, if you're not EVM compatible, it's a whole new set of consideration. And so for kind of this community, it's been incredible because now we can actually have Top Shot integrate with Ethereum applications, so we can bring our assets and our users and plug them into everything that you guys are working on a lot easier. For Flow developers, I think people haven't, because it hasn't happened yet, people don't yet know that, people don't yet sort of understand the full power of, hey, you can write an application in Cadence and it can actually control EVM assets, move stuff around. And so truly you can use Flow as a computation layer and Ethereum as a liquidity layer and actually have that be seamless to the user. And I think that's really powerful. So you can have the great onboarding experience like NBA Top Shot, et cetera, but then those assets aren't not part of the EVM environment. Those assets can actually flow back to Ethereum. Those assets can be collateralized inside, NFT DeFi that can live on both either the Ethereum side or the Flow side, and kind of that interoperability hasn't happened yet, so people don't realize it. But I think it's part of what sort of
it's powerful.
It's so powerful, and honestly, it's part of what broke. Like I think bull runs end when promise gets too far ahead of reality. And when, I'm on stage and everyone's on stage talking about, NFTs are the future, they're these interoperable digital assets. And yet, as I'm saying that in my head, I'm thinking, well, Top Shot is one of the biggest NFTs right now. OpenSea is the biggest NFT marketplace. You can't take Top Shot and put it on OpenSea. So even this kind of interoperable technology can't even interoperate with itself. And I think that's, something obviously, our choices were sort of responsible for, but I think it's and in a sense it was necessary, but I think we're sort of putting that back together and it gets me excited.
I'm going to put you on the spot here, but for people in the audience, give them an idea for how big existing games on Flow are. Just talk about either users or transactions or things you've done. Just sort of any recent stats that you're able to give us on the success of some of the games.
Yeah, well, I think we're still kind of scratching the surface. I mean, I think the biggest product on Flow is actually not a game, and in a way, sometimes the boring foundational stuff is actually interesting. I think Ticketmaster is one of the biggest NFT projects, period, right now. They've dropped over 10 million. They've dropped over 30 million NFTs to around 10 million people over the last 12 months. And part of that is just kind of, these are ticket stubs. They have the utility of ticket stubs, which is not a lot of utility, but it's establishing that concept of digital identity and provenance, and that people can build on top of that. And then when it comes to kind of like our products, so Top Shot, All Day, and now Disney Pinnacle, I think all three are just scratching the surface of what they can be. But you can kind of, if you squint and put them together, you can sort of see what we're working on for next season. So if you download the NFL All Day app, that's kind of the best onboarding we've ever had. About 40% of people that touch that product end up purchasing, which is obviously much higher than any other product we've built, certainly. That's sort of normal people downloading off the App Store. If you download the Disney Pinnacle app, you see it's got by far the best sort of onboarding, progression, activation experience, and about 75% of people that start that project, start the flow, end up finishing it, and they get off the charts retention 90% plus after 4 weeks. And then Top Shot, the new game we launched, Fast Break, which hasn't gone on chain yet, but will, and developers can build on top of it, including in the AVM environment, is kind of giving us the best retention rate we've ever had. So combining those three things together, this next season, we want to get to a point where every NBA, NFL ticket holder we can start giving them, hey, here's a Top Shot pack, here's $5, here's a way to come into our communities, and then you're talking tens of millions of additional sort of net new users coming into the product. But Top Shot today is still relatively small, 650,000 total holders, and tens of thousands of active users. Like that's an order of magnitude above where CryptoKitties was, but the thing that we have to all work on is that next order of magnitude above. How do you get to that 10 million holders and million active users? that's kind of where where we're focused on at Dapper, and where I think hopefully most of the builders kind of at the application level are focused on.
Especially when you kind of put that in context, which there's like 1 billion basketball fans out there. So even that is like 3 magnitudes of growth, and you get to expand even more on so many other kind of categories.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the basketball fans, but you can also look at more, even things like sports betting, even things like fantasy, even things like just physical trading cards, and thinking about the number of people that engage in sort of commerce-fueled activities around their fandom, and how hard it's been to actually get them into a crypto product, because it's about the buying and selling of it rather than just the sort of the community aspect of it. I think that's all going to change. And I'm also excited about things that are kind of digital only, that are kind of games where the digital thing derives utility because it's part of the digital universe. Whether that's what Doodles is doing with their Doodles and Azuki is doing with, hey, I own a thing, but it shows up in media, and we're trying to bootstrap an IP brand from the ground up. Like, again, things that go beyond just buying and selling.
Yeah, I think you kind of said something super interesting. A lot of it seems to be around activities that communities sort of do, whether it's a transition from doing this in person to kind of digital only, or just kind of bringing a community together that didn't really have an avenue before. Is that what you think is a good consumer app that kind of leverages crypto? Or like, to you, what is a successful crypto consumer app?
Well, I think the success is the million DAU. I think that's the next sort of glass ceiling to kind of break, and I think we're the pieces are coming together for it to happen. But actually, I'll maybe correct myself. It's the million DAU while having a fully composable developer experience. I think where you've seen consumer crypto go wrong in the past 2 years or 7 years is either you choose a fully open developer experience and you end up with a user experience that can't service more than the million or so crypto native people that exist in the world, or you end up Top Shot had an awesome user experience but a completely closed developer experience, and that prevented the sort of outside world from building on top of the users that we onboarded. And I think this next cycle, including the products we build, we're really trying to capture that energy, because that's where the true value of Web3 lies. It's, hey, there's a community here and you can build for it, and I can't even stop you, and I shouldn't be able to meter it. And I think when people recognize that hey, Web3 literally makes every asset kind of an app store where everyone can build apps for every asset that exists out there, and the owner or originator of that asset can't, it's just another piece of utility for them. And like that kind of openness, I think, is, obviously it's led to everything we have today. The concept of that you could build a marketplace for someone else's products, and we just take it as a normal thing is pretty special.
It's wild. Yeah.
It's wild. And I had a whole career in tech before crypto, and I could never imagine going back to writing software in a way that, like, hey, it's the useful information runs on a server somewhere that someone else could, even that I control. Why would you ever build software like that? The paradigm shift, I think you can never go back.
So it feels like it's not a good way to think about more people coming into the space by saying there's going to be some killer app that makes it possible for 100 million users to show up. And we're just looking for what that idea is, because everybody kind of thinks of it that way, and this is how it works in Web 2. Is kind of the thinking that for us to see millions and millions more people to kind of be day-to-day users of crypto, it's going to be kind of a slow start, but that it just becomes more of a retention game. We slowly get more people, or kind of do you feel like, no, there's a good chance that some killer app does sort of get a power law majority share, and we just haven't figured out what is the right play here, because anytime something becomes successful, it gets financialized, and that's kind of where the drop-off point is?
Well, I think the problem right now is the incentives are set up that, everyone wants short-term gains, and it's actually easier to get short-term gains by focusing on crypto native people than going and trying to get non-crypto natives into, a much lower kind of ARPU experience. But I do think there's going to be, I think what's happened in the past is a killer app emerges that shows a pattern that others copy. And the winner take all that's happened in the past has been at the distribution layer, right? There was a lot of experimentation on what a social game should look like even on the earlier social networks before Zynga kind of figured it out on Facebook, and that then Playdom and all these others kind of copied them, and now it's just how you build. I guess you don't build Facebook games anymore. But then the same thing happened on mobile, where since the days of Nokia, Snake, et cetera, people were trying to figure out what's the business model for games on mobile. But it was actually King and Supercell and
in-app purchases
with in-app purchases, but also that kind of like dopamine hooks and like the right kind of design that works. And 10 years later, mobile apps are kind of the same pattern, although much wider application. I think the same thing is true in crypto, where that pattern of, even being able to introduce content without new content without depressing the price of old content, that's not a trivial pattern to figure out. And I think Top Shot is just now starting to sort of figure out some of its pieces. But the sort of combining inflation with deflation basically is what I'm saying. But things like that are kind of what's inherent in sort of that game design of what a real crypto consumer application that millions of people can use every day looks like. And once someone figures it out, everyone else is going to copy. But I do think there's going to be a winner take most dynamic at some of the distribution layers, because yes, it's open, so Facebook can't like block you from it, and Apple can't charge a 30% tax and all that stuff. But habits matter, branding matters, user experience.
Convenience will still usually win.
Yes, exactly. So I think
this is, so maybe as a tangent, do you define crypto wallets that have a lot of users as consumer app, and like do you think that falls into the same category, or do you really see like a utility being, okay, so if it's not a game or a social network or a trading platform that has million users, that's not it's not consumer? And then where do kind of wallets fit in from your perspective?
Well, wallets, I'll just plug Flow Wallet, because I told those guys last night at dinner it has the potential to itself be a killer app. But I think generally, I don't think people should start with wallets. I think the current community has wallets, but I think if you think about the next billion rather than the last million, I think they're going to start with just the application that they start in, whether that's Ticketmaster to get a ticket stub, whether that's joining a community on NBA Top Shot, whether that's hey, I want a doodle, hey, whatever it is, you download the app, you buy the thing. That, in fact, the thing that became crystal clear to me in the early days of Top Shot, we've only had an app for a year or so, was anytime I told a normal person, a non-crypto person about NBA Top Shot, oh, wow, that's really cool. They popped open their app, went to the app store, and tried to search for Top Shot there. And it just, obviously it didn't show up. So I think most people will start by interacting with the brand. And so I think that, walletless onboarding, what Privy is doing, what Bastion is doing, what Magic is doing, it's so important. But the role of composability is critical, because it's not good enough if I'm stuck in a Dapper wallet somewhere and I can't actually use a third-party application. It's not good enough if I'm stuck in a sort of custodial solution, and then I have to export my private key. And then this whole key management space is another big kind of, it's not a solved problem. And you have either hardware wallets that are useless if someone steals your seed phrase, or you have software wallets where people are literally kind of copy pasting private keys back and forth. And, it's going to lead to some headaches somewhere. So I think, but that wallet software, whether the user thinks of it as a wallet or whether it is kind of more of a app store or a social network or whatever it is up for debate.
Yeah, the only reason I kind of brought it up was because I think the interesting question here is, what does it mean to have distribution, and then sort of who is still the last owner of that relationship for a distribution? And if your assets are in a single place, technically you're that avenue to explore everything that's out there. But we don't have a defined answer or even a defined playbook. If you're on OpenSea, technically OpenSea can still manage that catalog of all the NFTs you have. But if you have tokens, is that Uniswap managing this example, or is it my wallet's transaction page showing what I have, and who has a distribution? Because I have to still interact.
I think the power is with the consumer, because unlike any other product, you can just switch from Uniswap to whatever it is without leaving your stuff behind, right? Like I can go to uniswap.com, or I can go to OneEdge, or I can go to SushiSwap, or I can just use my same wallet, my same stuff. I can get the same value. I can use aggregators that compare the cost for me. And you couldn't imagine that
you never had that choice before. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, you had early days of instant messaging, right? The older people in the room will remember, you had the aggregators, you had your MSN friends, and you had your AOL friends and whatever. And I think that that's actually better for consumers in the long run, because it means that these platform providers can't withhold your information and increase their market cap at your expense. That sort of consumer surplus forced to everybody. So I think that's what, but like when you talk about OpenSea, I don't think OpenSea's value or the reason it has your eyeballs is, hey, it has your stuff, because your stuff is with you no matter what interface you're logged into.
It's the distribution and the marketplace aspect.
Exactly. Like more, going on the rankings, finding what's next, what's hot, what's the next opportunity.
And discovery, not distribution.
The discovery, and I think that's underexplored actually by that team, because in a lot of ways, for a long time, OpenSea was the sort of the homepage of Ethereum. So how do you get that sort of dynamic back? And actually, I'll plug the Flowverse guys who are in the audience, because they run a marketplace on Flow, but it started off with saying, hey, how do we become the homepage of, and just show what's happening, and then people get interested in what they want, and then get the stuff you want. But how do you make that experience super seamless, exciting, social? It's not just about what I want, but about what my friends are doing. And kind of, and getting rid of these barriers between, hey, this network versus that network. That's nonsensical for an average consumer. They shouldn't care that an asset is on, an L2, which L2 versus which L1. It's just got to be about, what best developer experience, best customer experience. I think that's what's going to win.
I think you kind of already answered my last question a bit in parts, but I'll still kind of ask it to you in case there's a more concise way you want to put something, or to say differently. For those in the audience who are thinking of starting a consumer crypto company, what advice would you give them?
Well, do it. It's a lot of fun. I think the single most fun thing you can do in crypto, because it's you can play around with weird ideas, and it can just be part of your daily job. But my second advice is to really pick the audience you're going after and focus on it, because compromise, I think, kills any sort of just creativity and any kind of customer value. So whether you are going after the existing crypto native community, build something awesome for them, or you're going after some new kind of community, pick a deep niche and build something awesome for them.
Roham, thank you so much for this amazing conversation. And if you have any questions for him, feel free to find him after off stage.
Thank you.